Effective immediately. You're done here. The words hit like a gavel slamming down on bone. In a room lined with glass and gloss, where silence usually meant control, that sentence fractured everything. The boardroom of Devlin Systems, 47th floor, 11:02 a.m. Polished mahogany table, frosted wall art, and 12 suits who thought they still ran the world. At the head of the table sat Malcolm Reed, calm, composed, and now ousted. The chairman, Gerald Voss, didn't look up when he delivered the blow. His voice was clipped, clinical. A thin smile played on his lips, not joy, something colder. We took a vote. You're no longer CEO. Pack your things. Someone coughed. Someone else shifted in their leather chair. But no one spoke up. Not yet. Malcolm didn't blink, didn't flinch. No outburst. No defense. Just a slow exhale like a man who saw it coming. Like a man who let it. He stood, not rushed, not rattled. Wore no tie. Just a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled, a fountain pen still clipped to the collar. You're making a mistake, he said simply. Gerald scoffed. No, we're correcting one. Then another voice, quieter, laced with venom. Cynthia Lau, CFO. This company needs vision, not charity. The board doesn't answer to community projects. She didn't say black. She didn't have to. Across the table, Eli Morrison, head of global strategy, added, You have potential, Malcolm, but you forgot who this company serves. Malcolm looked at him, eyes steady, unreadable, then turned to the only black person in the room besides himself, Kendra, the junior board secretary, standing at the glass door, eyes wide, fingers tight around her clipboard. She'd been there barely a month. She saw everything. Malcolm walked toward the door. No box, no laptop, just a pen. But before stepping out, he paused, turned halfway, and said, Has the resolution been recorded in the minutes? Gerald shrugged. Does it matter? Malcolm nodded once. It will. Then he left. Silence didn't return to the boardroom. It just mutated into unease. Because outside those doors, something had shifted, and none of them saw the tremor coming. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Malcolm. The door clicked shut behind Malcolm, but the ripple it left inside the boardroom lingered. Down the corridor, he walked like a man late for nothing, each step measured, each breath steady. The kind of silence that follows storms or prefaces them. He didn't head to his office, didn't stop by legal. Instead, he took the elevator straight to B3, the parking level no one ever used, except one. Rafael Soto, 52, his driver for 8 years, stood leaning against a matte black Mercedes. Arms crossed, Bluetooth earpiece glowing. Malcolm stepped in without a word. The door's shut. You good? Rafael asked, shifting into drive. Malcolm replied, Start the clock. Rafael nodded and tapped the dash. 12 hours. That was the window. Inside the car, Malcolm removed the pen from his collar and twisted its top once, quietly activating the proxy protocol. 12 months ago, he'd signed over 41% of Devlin Systems voting shares into a dormant trust fund, sealed, invisible, and legally binding. The trigger clause? Hostile removal by board vote. And they just pulled it. Elsewhere at the company's Midtown data vault, Amira Boone, 39, chief security architect, received a silent notification. A blinking symbol. Red. Protocol Theta. Her eyes widened. It's live. Back in the tower, the boardroom buzzed with low talk and nervous glances. Did he seem too calm? Gerald, are we sure we locked him out of all systems? I mean, yes, IT confirmed it, but Gerald wasn't so sure anymore. He tugged at his collar, sweat starting to gather behind his ear. He'd seen ousted CEOs rage, cry, beg. Malcolm didn't even blink. That wasn't resignation. That was preparation. Inside the car, Malcolm was reviewing timelines. 6 p.m. press release goes live. 8 p.m. shareholder access revealed. 10:45 p.m. emergency audit triggers. His voice was calm as he spoke into the headset. Activate safe house node for Daniels, Boone, and Young. Pull archive tapes from last 6 board meetings. And log external trading activity 24 hours prior to the vote. A pause. And contact Irene. Tell her, I forgive her. The phone call lasted under a minute, but the echoes of it stretched across 6 city blocks. Upstairs, Kendra, still shaken, sat at her desk flipping through meeting notes. The moment Malcolm looked at her, not scared, not angry, just calm, she opened her inbox. A new message. Subject line. Don't say anything yet, just watch. Attached was a time-stamped video from 6 weeks ago. Boardroom cam, unfiltered. Gerald saying, he'll never see it coming. Cynthia adding, by the time he does, we'll have sanitized everything. Back in the car, Raphael turned down the side street. You ready? Malcolm adjusted his watch. I was ready 12 months ago. Then, almost to himself, they think they fired me today, but they just signed the company over. The sun dipped lower, behind the skyline. 12 hours had started ticking, and with every second, the board's illusion of control unraveled. By 4:17 p.m., the first crack appeared. A tweet, just one, from a small, unverified account tied to a finance intern blog. Hearing whispers of a massive proxy shift at Devlin Systems, someone's flipping the board. It got 10 likes, then a quote or tweet from a mid-tier tech analyst, then another. And within the hour, TechCrunch, Forbes, and CNBC all had inboxes flooded with the same question. Who just took over Devlin Systems? Inside the tower, the air was no longer still. It was tight. Gerald leaned over the 27th floor war room table, voice sharp. Where the hell is this coming from? Cynthia replied without looking up, scrolling her phone furiously. Reddit's picking it up, but it's fragmented, no names. Yet, they didn't see the whisper was by design. Controlled combustion. A quiet blaze Malcolm had lit 11 hours, 43 minutes ago. At 4:38 p.m., Malcolm sat in a corner booth of Brenton's Cafe, a no-name spot near Union Square. His phone face down, coffee untouched. Across from him sat Jonas Hale, 63, former SEC investigator turned corporate watchdog. You're sure about this? Jonas asked, leaning in. Malcolm replied, voice low but level. They forged votes, falsified board minutes, and moved shares pre-announcement. You've seen the logs. Jonas nodded, lips tight. I have. And when the dust clears, Malcolm continued, you'll get everything. Jonas stared at him. You're not just trying to win this, are you? Malcolm met his eyes. I'm ending it. Back at Devlin, the hallway monitors began glitching. A company-wide error code. Protocol Theta. Compliance redacted. IT scrambled. Legal fumbled. At 5:12 p.m., Kendra received another anonymous email. Subject, redaction request ignored. Body, they erased it from the servers, but not from the building. Attached was an audio file. She plugged in headphones. The voices were clear. Cynthia, Malcolm's to public. We need to gut him fast and make it clean. Gerald, then we fabricate. Tell Pierre he pushed a day agenda that tanked revenue. Her hand shook. She paused the tape. Then she hit forward. 2. Internal.audit@devlinsys.com. By 5:41 p.m., the tremor was now a fault line. Shareholders began calling. To board members went dark. The PR director slipped out for a quick call and never returned. In the HR Slack channel, someone posted, did anyone else get the weird compliance lockout? No one replied, but 20 people saw it. Meanwhile, Malcolm entered a side door to a building with no signage. 3rd floor, an old architecture firm he'd bought under a shell company last year, now wired top to bottom with servers. Inside, Amira Boone waited. They're trying to shut down internal access, she said. Malcolm nodded. Let them. He tapped the console screen. Deploy firewall mirror. Let them think they've blocked us. And the vault? He paused. Open it. Timestamp everything. Public read mode, 7 p.m. sharp. Amira raised an eyebrow. You're exposing the entire board. All but one. She didn't ask who. She already knew. And as the sun dipped below the skyline, the world didn't know it yet, but Devlin Systems had already changed hands. Only the old board hadn't realized. They were now guests in someone else's house. By 6:04 p.m., the Devlin Systems boardroom no longer felt like a center of command. It felt like a sinking ship. The room that once held power now held panic. Cynthia's voice was sharp, slicing the air. We have to control the narrative before the East Coast closes. Gerald snapped back. Control what? We don't even know who leaked the documents. Eli paced by the window, tapping a pen against his palm. The shareholders are asking about the trust. That's not a rumor. Someone fed them details. No one looked at the screen behind them, where CNBC now ran a red banner. Breaking. Unverified reports of hostile stake reversal at Devlin Systems. In the corner, Yusuf Khan, head of legal, loosened his tie. We need to call a vote, he said quietly. Emergency reinstatement. Bring Malcolm back. Gerald cut in, furious. Absolutely not. Then we're dead, Yusuf snapped. You don't get it. If what I'm seeing is true, he's the majority now. A beat of silence. Then Cynthia whispered the words none of them wanted to hear. He played us. At 6:18 p.m., in a nondescript loft 10 blocks away. Malcolm stood in front of a whiteboard covered in timelines. Behind him, Amira. On the screen, Jonas. And now joining remotely, Irene Walsh, former Devlin board member, the one who didn't vote. She stared into the camera, expression hard. You told me it was just a contingency, she said, not this. Malcolm replied, calm but absolute. It was a contingency. Until they turned it into a coup. Irene closed her eyes briefly, then opened them. I'll vote with you. Back at Devlin headquarters, Kendra sat in a silent cubicle. She had printed the leaked audio. She had the email logs. And she had a choice. She looked down at the flash drive on her lap, then up at the hallway clock. 6:31 p.m. Malcolm's message came through. When the time is right, speak, not before. She nodded, even though no one was there to see it. Then she stood up. In the boardroom, the arguing had turned to shouting. Gerald, we bury it. We draft a counterpress. We say he forged the trust. Cynthia, that'll blow back. SEC will eat us alive. Eli, what if we flip it? Say it was a diversity stunt gone wrong. The door creaked open. Kendra stepped in. 12 heads turned. She walked slowly to the table. No paper, no folder, just the flash drive. She placed it in the center. No stunt, she said. No scam. You didn't fire Malcolm because he failed. You fired him because he didn't fit your image of success. Gerald sneered. You don't get to lecture this room. I'm not here to lecture, Kendra said. I'm here to confirm. That drive contains proof of collusion, forgery, and intent to mislead shareholders. Cynthia stood up. You'll be sued. Already filed for whistleblower protection, Kendra replied. Eli stepped back, hands half raised. What do you want? Kendra turned toward the screen now flashing 6:44 p.m. She smiled faintly. I want you to sit still and watch what happens at 7. Outside the building, in homes and offices and coffee shops across the country. Thousands were preparing to do just that, because at 7 p.m., Malcolm Reed would go live. And he wouldn't just reveal the truth. He'd reveal who still believed in it. 7 p.m. sharp. No countdown, no flashy intro. Just a black screen fading into the image of a man still, centered, and impossible to ignore. Malcolm Reed, seated against a dark background. No logos, no titles, only presence. He looked directly into the lens. My name is Malcolm Reed, he began. Until this morning, I was CEO of Devlin Systems. And tonight, I want to tell you the truth. The view count climbed. 4,000, 12,000. Within 90 seconds, 78,000 live viewers. Back in the boardroom, the air turned heavy. Gerald leaned forward, eyes wide. Turn that off, he barked at Yusuf. Yusuf didn't move. Neither did Cynthia. No one could. The feed played on the room side screen, uninvited. but unstoppable. Malcolm continued, calm and precise. 6 months ago, I created a private trust. The trust now holds 41% of voting shares in this company, activated only in the event of a hostile termination. He let the words settle. I didn't do it out of paranoia. I did it because I've been in rooms like that boardroom too many times before. He paused. Rooms where your ideas are welcome, but your presence is tolerated. Where silence is praised and isn't yours. The comments section exploded. This man planned everything. Goosebumps. I know that room. Been there too. He glanced down briefly, then back at the camera. This morning, I was fired not for poor performance, but for refusing to shrink. For refusing to step back while others distorted the company's mission for convenience, for comfort, and for profit. The screen split. Side by side appeared time-stamped board transcripts, audio waveforms, a flowchart of pre-vote stock movement, receipts. Amira sat across the street in the vault suite, watching the stream play on 10 mirror displays. Jonas Hale, now on a Zoom panel at CNBC, spoke live. I've reviewed the documents. This wasn't a spontaneous vote. It was a coordinated removal strategic, deliberate, and in violation of federal corporate code. Back in the boardroom, Ellie's phone buzzed violently. 3 shareholder reps had just texted him. We're with Malcolm. Fix this, or we walk. Cynthia slumped in her chair. Kendra stood by the door, silent, but glowing. Malcolm's voice cut in again, low but with weight. I was told I didn't fit the future of Devlin, but I am the future. Because I built this company not on comfort but on clarity. Not on legacy, but on truth. He paused, and then he said the line no one expected Donnie that wouldn't just go viral, but redefine the brand's legacy. You fired me to silence me, but I own the microphone now. Applause broke out in living rooms, offices, and corner cafes across the country. Even in the Devlin headquarters cafeteria, staff clapped. Security officers watching from a small monitor near the lobby high-fived silently. Back on screen, Malcolm leaned in just slightly. Effective now, I'm returning as CEO, and tomorrow, the board will look very different. The feed ended. The silence it left behind wasn't empty. It was electric. In the boardroom, Gerald stood up to fast and knocked over a glass. Cynthia looked down, finally understanding. This wasn't just a live stream. It was a funeral for their version of power. 8:12 p.m. Devlin Systems HQ. Main lobby. The revolving doors spun slowly, like they knew what was coming. Malcolm Reed stepped through them not as a visitor, not as a guest. As the man now holding the reins, he didn't bring lawyers. No entourage. Just Raphael behind him, silent and steady. The security guard at the front descanter stood up fast. Sir, the second saw the stream. Malcolm nodded once. Then you know I'm not here for a meeting. Andre glanced at the access pad. Malcolm pulled out his badge. Green light. The scanner beeped once a clear, unquestionable. The building still remembered who he was. Upstairs, Gerald was pacing, sweat on his collar, phone glued to his ear. No, listen to me. If we stall until market open, we can frame it as a restructuring. We say it was mutual, strategic. Nobody needs to panic. Ding. The elevator. He turned, and his voice caught in his throat. Malcolm stepped into the boardroom, alone, but not powerless. Not anymore. I believe this seat was mine, Malcolm said, nodding to the empty head chair. Gerald stammered. You can't just. Check the share registry, Malcolm interrupted, voice even. It updated 42 minutes ago. Yusuf reached for his tablet. Cynthia already had. Her hand trembled as she turned the screen to face the room. Malcolm, 41%. Voting rights, active. He took his seat and hurried, unapologetic. You tried to erase me, he said, folding his hands on the table. But erasing doesn't work when the ink writes itself. No one spoke. He turned to Cynthia. You forged 3 sign-offs. I have them time-stamped. Legal is already processing your exit. She flinched. You don't have that authority. You're right, he replied. But the board does. He tapped the mic from the hallway. The sound of voices approaching. One by one, the doors opened to revealing 3 new board members. Irene Walsh, Kendra James, and a surprise, Jonas Hale, appointed by emergency shareholder vote. Gerald stood up, red-faced. "This is a sham." "It's justice," Malcolm replied, long delayed, but not denied. Across town, news outlets pushed headlines. Malcolm Reed reinstated. Devlin Board purge midnight shakeup. Reddit threads exploded. CNBC ran side-by-sides of Gerald's firing vote and Malcolm's live stream. The people weren't just watching, they were choosing sides. And the scale tipped loud and clear. Back in the room, Malcolm looked around once more. Measured, decisive. "You spent your time building narratives. I spent mine building the structure to outlast them." He turned to Raphael, standing quietly near the door. "Escort Gerald out." Gerald laughed bitterly. "You don't have the guts." Malcolm didn't smile. "I don't need guts. I have the minutes." The new board voted 3-1. Cynthia didn't even vote. She was already gathering her tablet. Gerald stormed past Raphael, hurling, "This company's finished." Malcolm said softly, "Just loud enough." "No, Gerald. It just started." 9:03 p.m. Devlin Systems, 17th floor. Operations Hub. The news had already reached every floor. Monitors flickered with the headline, "Malcolm Reed returns. Board purge underway." Some paused, some whispered, but most, they stood taller. Because truth didn't just rip like called. Jada Whitmore, 29, a junior engineer, stared at her screen, hands trembling. For 3 months, she kept her head down, watched decisions made without her input, heard her name skipped in credit meetings, told it was seniority, but she knew what it was. Now, watching Malcolm reclaim the chair, she felt something shift. Something ancient and present all at once. Permission. She stood up, walked to the internal comms desk, typed 3 words. "Ready when you are." 17 floors above, Malcolm sat alone in the glass-walled CEO office. He hadn't touched the leather chair in hours, just watched the city glow beneath him. His phone buzzed. "Amira, they're moving." "Jonas, internal testimonies are flooding in." He nodded slowly, then turned as the door opened. Kendra stepped in, flash drive in hand. "They sent it," she said. "The engineers, the finance juniors, even legal interns. All of them." She placed the drive on the desk like it was an offering, or a verdict. Malcolm didn't reach for it, just looked her in the eyes. "You ever wonder," he said quietly, "how many people stayed quiet not out of fear but because no one ever stayed long enough to listen?" Kendra's voice cracked. "I stayed." Malcolm nodded. "I know." Downstairs, the internal Slack channels lit up with a new thread. Voice unfiltered. Jada posted first. Then Marcus Lee, a shy data analyst who never spoke in meetings, shared a screenshot. A project Malcolm had approved that others tried to bury. Attached was one line. "He saw what we were building. Now let's help him finish it." At 9:27 p.m., a new memo hit every inbox company-wide. From Office of the CEO. Subject, Truth and Transition. "Tonight, we begin a full audit of leadership conduct over the past 18 months. If you've experienced silencing, dismissal, or misconduct, this is your time. You will be heard. You will not be punished. Send everything." This time, the walls listened back. No logos, no HR jargon, just clarity. Back in the lobby, the night janitor Howard, who'd seen more 3 a.m. meetings than most VPs, turned to his partner. "He's really back," he whispered. The other nodded. "Told you, quiet ones always are." On the 19th floor, Elena Brooks, head of diversity and ethics, who had filed 3 complaints, the board ignoratrice of her own. Notification. Case 193A reopened. Her eyes filled, but she smiled through it. The building was finally breathing again, and in the quiet of his office, Malcolm finally sat down, not to rest, to listen. Because leadership wasn't the microphone, it was what you did after you earned it. 10:11 p.m. The inbox cracked. Subject lines poured in like rain on glass. About the marketing exec who blocked promotions. Finance team audit cover-up screenshots inside. Heard, but never helped. Here's my story. Malcolm sat at his desk, hands folded, watching the dashboard light up. Dozens, then hundreds. A wave that couldn't be damned anymore. Across the screen, a map of internal departments blinked each pulse, a voice once silenced, now awake. In the corner of the room, Amira patched into the internal archive. She turned to Malcolm. Some of these files, they date back years. You weren't just fired, you were targeted. Malcolm exhaled through his nose. They were never afraid of me being wrong. They were afraid of me being right for the wrong crowd. He tapped the screen once. Sort by discipline reports ignored. Let's start there. Down in human resources, Elena Brooks stayed late. Alone. She watched her own name rise in an internal memo. Cases originally closed without cause being reopened for ethical audit. It was the first time, and for years she'd seen that line. And believed it. Her eyes scanned a list. Marcus Lee, Jada Whitmore, 2 assistants in R&D, even a cafeteria worker who'd filed a complaint about language used by AVP. None of them were forgotten. They were coming into view. 10:48 p.m. The internal server strained under the weight. Kendra coordinated triage teams across legal and operations. Jonas Hale fed the growing media frenzy with curated drops. CNBC's headline refreshed. Devlin whistleblower portal crashes from volume, employees speak out after CEO's return. Twitter threads exploded with screenshots. My manager said I was too urban for client-facing roles. I stayed quiet. Not anymore. He let them think he lost. Meanwhile, he was documenting everything. Black chess. In a quiet wing of Devlin's LA office, a night shift worker named Tracy sat at her desk. She hadn't spoken during last year's day review. Didn't see the point. But now, she opened her camera. Recorded a 30-second video. No makeup, no edits. You don't know me, Mr. Reed. But you made space I didn't know I needed. So I'm sending this. Not because I think you'll watch it, but because someone will. And that means I'm not invisible anymore. She clicked send. In the New York Tower, Malcolm played her video 3 times. He didn't say anything, but he saved it to a folder named Proof of Change. By 11:19 p.m., a new email went out. From Office of the CEO. Subject, the vault is open. As of midnight, a public-facing report will show anonymized summaries of the first wave of testimonies. The goal is not exposure. It is accountability. We are not here to punish. We are here to rebuild, with truth as the foundation. Somewhere across the city, Gerald Voss watched the live updates. He threw a glass against the wall. This isn't justice, he snarled. It's revenge. But even he could see it. Revenge screams. This was quiet and unstoppable. Malcolm stood up, looked out across the city. 12 hours ago, they fired him. In 49 minutes, he would make the company more honest than it had ever dared to be. 11:59 p.m. Devlin Systems' homepage faded to black. No press release. No banner. Just one line of white text. This is what was hidden. Now, it belongs to you. At midnight, the link went live. The Vault Report, a 76-page anonymized document compiled in under 6 horse painstakingly, surgically, but with purpose. It didn't name names. It named patterns. Page 1. 43 employee testimonies ignored by HR. 18 reports of discriminatory language left unaddressed. 11 promotions blocked with no justification. Black or brown employees. 6 whistleblowers punished with relocation or performance reviews. And in bold at the bottom, this isn't about blame. It's about clarity. And clarity invites change. By 12:08 a.m., the download count passed 70,000. By 12:11, The Guardian and Fast Company ran live reactions. A corporate reckoning without the spin. The most transparent move in modern executive history. Hashtags exploded. Devlin Truth. Vault's open. Reader builds. Inside the tower, Malcolm stood beside Kendra, Amira, Jonas, and Elena. No fanfare, just presence. Amira handed him a tablet. It's done, she said. Malcolm read the dashboard quietly. 15 department heads requested meetings. 9 regional directors issued statements of support. And 1 email from Cynthia Lau asking for a one-on-one. He didn't reply. Across the city, in a WeWork in Brooklyn, Jada Whitmore sat with a group of peers. Engineers, designers, interns. The vault report glowed on the projector screen. She stood. "I thought if I stayed silent, I could survive here," she said. Turns out, silence was the slowest form of exit. Someone whispered. He flipped the script. Jada corrected them. "No." He returned the pen. At 12:24 a.m., Malcolm opened the floor on Devlin's internal live stream. Employees could submit 1 question anonymous or signed. He read them aloud. "What happens next? Will we be safe to speak? Why did you wait?" He answered each slowly. "The next 90 days will define our future. Yes, you're safe. That's the point. And I waited because no revolution should be impulsive. It should be unmistakable." 12:35 a.m. The vault report was mirrored onto Devlin's public investor page. Some tried to stop it. Legal teams stalled. But the board's new majority overruled them. Transparency wasn't optional anymore. It was policy. Meanwhile, Gerald Voss sat in his condo, scrolling through the document. The line that stopped him wasn't about racism or power. It was this. They thought silence was compliance. "We just didn't have a platform. Now we do." He muttered to himself, bitter. He's turning victims into a movement. But even he knew, movements move markets. And Devlin was no longer his to control. At the tower, Malcolm stood once more before the same glass that watched him fall 12 hours ago. He didn't smile, didn't raise his arms like a hero. He simply whispered to himself. This was never about saving face. It was about saving the space. 6:03 a.m. Devlin Systems, Investor Relations floor. The phones rang before the sun rose. Not with questions, with ultimatums. "We want clarity on executive involvement in the vault cases. What are the board's next steps to restore integrity? If Reed isn't in full control, our capital walks." By 6:17 a.m., 5 of Devlin's top institutional investors have formed a coalition. A new phrase appeared in their group memo: leadership accountability or leveraged exit. At 6:29 a.m., CNN Business went live from outside Devlin's HQ. Anchor's voice crisp. In a historic 12-hour reversal, Malcolm Reed has not only reclaimed his role as CEO, but ignited what analysts are calling a blueprint for corporate justice. On screen, footage rolled, employees applauding, Slack threads surfacing, screenshots of the vault report going viral. In the corner, a single line scrolled. Power no longer whispers, it documents. Inside the building, Gerald's name vanished from the internal directory. Cynthia's email bounced back as deactivated. Eli resigned quietly at 4:42 a.m. No press, no speech. They weren't forced out by fury. They were outlived by truth. Malcolm entered the strategy room. No suit, no laptop, just a single sheet of paper. He placed it on the table. Kendra, Amira, Jonas, Elena all gathered. At the top, it read, Restoration Protocol, Phase 1. Bullet points followed. Appoint Independent Oversight Council. Mandatory Leadership Ethics Review. Public Compensation Transparency. Anonymous Testimony Archive Permanent Access. Jonas leaned in. You're not just cleaning house. You're rebuilding the foundation. Malcolm nodded. I'm not here to survive them. I'm here to replace the conditions that created them. Back in the lobby, a crowd began forming. Media vans, reporters, but also employees, line workers, mailroom staffed engineers, some in Devlin lanyards, some in plain tees, all watching the doors, waiting for the man who turned a firing into a future. Meanwhile, in a closed-door meeting at the SEC, a senior compliance officer slid the vault report across the table. Devlin's leadership ignored this for years, he said, but the new team. He paused. They published it themselves. That changes everything. The folder was stamped, Case for 7C, Self-Disclosure with Systemic Integrity. By 7:02 a.m., Devlin's Systems was trending on every major platform. But for once, not because of scandal, because of structure. News outlets framed it not as a meltdown, but a metamorphosis, a new precedent in corporate governance, not forced by regulators, not incited by boycotts, driven by the target himself. At his desk, Malcolm read a text from Raphael. "Cameras outside. You stepping out." He replied simply, "In 10. They can wait. I've waited longer." Then turned to a stack of employee letters being reviewed. Every one handwritten, every one stamped read. No names, no fanfare, just stories. He closed the folder, then said to the room, "We lead differently now. Not louder, just clearer." Amira raised her coffee. To the quiet ones who prepared the storm, Malcolm clinked his glass gently. To those who were never weak, just never had the microphone. 8:45 a.m. Devlin's Systems headquarters. South Atrium Press Assembly. Dozens of cameras, 200 journalists, and one microphone. The same boardroom that silenced Malcolm Reed 24 hours earlier had now been cleared, reconfigured, for a statement, not a spectacle. No podium, just a circle of chairs, unranked, unassigned. Malcolm stepped into the light. He wore no tie, no lapel pin, just clarity in his eyes. The room hushed. A CNN anchor whispered off camera, "This isn't a press conference. It's a message." Malcolm sat, then spoke. "Good morning. My name is Malcolm Reed, and this time yesterday, I was fired." Murmurs across the crowd. I was fired by a system pretending to be a board. A system that mistook comfort for leadership and feared change more than collapse. He looked directly into the cameras. "But I'm not here to gloat. I'm here to build." He gestured behind him toward a transparent screen now displaying 3 words. Integrity, structure, access. "These aren't buzzwords," he continued. "They're blueprints." A journalist called out, "Are you saying the old board was corrupt?" Malcolm didn't flinch. "I'm saying they were comfortable. And when comfort meets power without consequence, the result is erosion. Silent, slow, systemic." Another reporter. "What do you say to CEOs watching this, afraid you've just opened the floodgates?" Malcolm leaned forward. "I didn't open them. I documented the flood. On social media, the live stream surged past 1.2 million viewers. A trending thread read, 'This isn't cancel culture. It's consequence culture with receipts.'" Another. "Malcolm Reed didn't return with a vengeance. He returned with version control." Back in the atrium, Malcolm stood now. "But let's be clear, this isn't just about Devlin's Systems. This is about every room where silence cost someone their dignity, where culture was used as camouflage, where accountability was framed as attack." The screen behind him shifted again, now displaying the first line of the Vault report. "This is not about blame. This is about clarity." He paused, then delivered the line that would echo across boardrooms for years. "We don't lead to preserve privilege. We lead to prevent repeat." Cameras flashed, but the crowd didn't cheer. They stood, not in applause, in recognition. Later that morning, the Financial Times ran a front-page headline, "The Reed Doctrine, Ethics as Infrastructure." Meanwhile, Fortune magazine published a special editorial. What if power didn't mean silence? What if being the only black voice in the room didn't mean being the last to speak? Across the country, boardrooms shifted. Companies rushed to review whistleblower policies. Some quietly called their HR departments. Others asked for consultations. Because what Malcolm built wasn't just a comeback, it was a compass. And back at Devlin, as the press began to pack, Malcolm walked to the exit. A junior reporter chased him down. "Mr. Reed, if you could summarize this moment in one line, what would it be?" He stopped, turned, then said softly, "They wanted legacy. I gave them a mirror." 11:59 p.m. One full day. That's how long it took to dismantle an empire built on silence and reconstruct its blueprint using truth. But Malcolm Reed didn't celebrate. He walked the empty corridors of Devlin's Systems. Lights dimmed, screens paused. This was the hour where noise faded, where ego couldn't hide behind applause. And that's exactly where he liked it. On the 21st floor, a janitor named Howard mopped the marble entry. He looked up as Malcolm approached. "You still here, boss?" Howard asked, tired but smiling. Malcolm nodded, still walking. Howard leaned on the handle. "I've seen them come and go. Loud ones, smart ones. But you're the first one who asked me where the elevator key was." Malcolm smiled gently. "Didn't want to assume you were invisible." Howard shook his head. "No, sir, you saw everything." In the main conference room, no cleared of glass walls and nameplates. Malcolm paused before the board table. He placed one thing at its center. His pen. The same one he wore the day they fired him. He didn't need it anymore. This table no longer belonged to one man. It now belonged to every voice brave enough to speak when it's easier not to. At 12:24 a.m., Raphael pulled the car around. "You want the highway or the slow route?" he asked. Malcolm glanced back at the building. "Tired, but unbroken. Slow." They drove past the late shift cafeteria staff, past the engineers still working on the transparency portal, past Kendra, who was helping a new intern reset her badge access. All still there. Not because of Malcolm, but because of what his silence refused to become. In the back seat, Malcolm opened a small leather notebook. On the first page, a quote he wrote down years ago: "Legacy is not a statue. It's how many hands it frees." He closed the book, closed his eyes, and exhaled. Across the country, in homes and offices and dorm rooms, people weren't talking about a corporate comeback. They were talking about something else. A new kind of leadership, one that didn't shout its credentials, but proved them in pressure. Not a savior, not a hero, a mirror. At 1:12 a.m., Malcolm texted one last message to his entire staff. "If you ever feel unheard here again, this company failed. But if you remember that silence is the slowest collapse, then maybe, just maybe, we won't need another vault to open." And as the city slept somewhere between night and legacy, Malcolm disappeared into stillness. No press, no lights, just a man who refused to make noise when clarity was louder.